Dawn was breaking with its mantle of silence over Evergreen Ranch as Robert Anderson opened his eyes even before the first ray of sunlight touched the horizon. It was a ritual that had repeated itself for decades, but in the last 5 years, it carried the weight of a loneliness that seemed to grow with each morning. The mattress beside him remained untouched, the covers smooth like a mirror of the absence that Helen had left. He rose slowly, his knees cracking in protest of his well-lived 62 years. The wooden floor creaked under his bare feet as he walked to the window of the master bedroom. Outside, the field stretched infinitely under the still dark sky, dotted with the first stars that insisted on shining before bidding farewell to the dawning day. "Good morning, Lord," he murmured as he did every morning, a simple prayer that Helen had taught him when they were young. His voice echoed in the empty room, reminding him that now he spoke only to himself. The kitchen of the main house maintained the same arrangement as always, the solid wooden table in the center, the iron pots hanging on the wall, the wood-burning stove that Helen had insisted on keeping even after they installed the gas one. Robert prepared his black coffee, strong as he liked it, and watched the steam rise from the cup as the first birds began to sing in the oak trees in the yard. Gradually, the ranch awakened. Jack, his foreman for more than 20 years, was already in the corral milking the cows. The ranch hands arrived on their motorcycles, greeting each other with nods and quick words that were lost in the morning breeze. It was the symphony of rural work that Robert knew by heart, but lately seemed to sound different, as if something were missing. He put on his leather boots, already damp from the morning dew, and walked toward the stable where Shadow awaited him. The horse was his pride, a purebred black as night, with a mane that swayed in the wind like silk. He had won 3 state championships and was considered one of the best specimens in the region. But for Robert, Shadow represented something more than trophies and recognition. "Good morning, my friend," he said, extending his hand for the animal to sniff. Shadow whinnied softly, a sound that always calmed the rancher's heavy heart. "You seem restless today." Indeed, there was something different in the horse's behavior. His ears moved constantly, like radars picking up signals that Robert couldn't perceive. The animal pawed the ground insistently, repeatedly turning his head toward the woods that surrounded the pasture. Robert frowned, following the horse's gaze. The woods looked normal, with tall trees swaying gently in the breeze. But Shadow remained restless, whinnying softly and stomping on the hard-packed earth. It was as if he smelled something different in the air, something that kept him alert. "What is it, boy? What are you sensing out there?" The rancher decided to investigate. He had learned over the years to trust the instincts of animals. They perceived things that humans, with all their technology and knowledge, often ignored. He mounted Shadow and headed in the direction the horse was looking. The light sandy trail leading to the pasture was marked by tracks that Robert didn't immediately recognize. They were wide, deep, different from the marks left by cattle. He dismounted and knelt to examine them better. The grooves were torn, as if something heavy had passed during the night. A shiver ran down his neck. In 4 decades working the land, he had developed a 6th sense for danger. And at that moment, something told him that this morning would be different from all others. Shadow continued to be restless, sniffing the air and shaking his head. Robert remounted and decided to continue his investigation. He needed to know what had visited his property during the night. After all, Evergreen Ranch was his responsibility, his legacy, the future he intended to leave for Emily. As they advanced along the trail, the strong, sweet smell of wild animal began to hang in the morning air. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Let us know what city you're watching from. We continue. The smell intensified as Robert and Shadow advanced along the dewy trail. It was a wild, primitive odor that contrasted with the sweet perfume of wet grass and the oak blossoms that fell like yellow confetti along the path. The rancher had smelled this kind of scent before, but couldn't identify exactly where or when. Shadow slowed his pace, his nostrils dilated, catching every nuance of the morning air. His hooves made a dull sound against the hard-packed earth, a nervous rhythm that betrayed his growing restlessness. Robert stroked the horse's neck, feeling the tension of the muscles beneath the black, glossy coat. "Easy, my friend, let's go slowly." Further ahead, the fence posts of the electric fence showed strange signs. The wires were pressed down, the wood slightly bent, as if something large had forced its way through with strength, but without breaking the structure. Robert dismounted again, running, his fingers along the taut wires. "Jack needs to see this," he murmured to himself, but something made him hesitate. Perhaps it would be better to investigate alone before alarming the whole team. After all, it could just be a stray animal, cattle from a neighboring ranch that had wandered off during the night. He resumed riding, following the tracks that became more evident with each step. The footprints led toward the pasture, the most isolated area of the property where the cattle usually grazed during the day. As they approached, Robert noticed that there wasn't a single head of cattle in sight. Strange. Normally, at this time of morning, the cows would already be scattered across the pasture, enjoying the coolness before the heat of the day. "Where is everyone?" he asked the wind, feeling a chill in his stomach that had nothing to do with the morning temperature. Shadow stopped abruptly, ears upright, body rigid as a statue. The horse was staring fixedly at the dense woods that bordered the pasture, emitting a low, nervous whinny. Robert followed his gaze, but couldn't see anything beyond the dark shadows between the trees. It was then that he heard a distant sound, a deep, profound lowing, different from the sounds he knew. It wasn't the familiar voice of his Holstein, cows or the bulls he kept for breeding. It was something more primitive, more wild, that made his hair stand on end. The sun had completely risen now, painting the sky in golden and rosy hues. The light filtered through the leaves created a play of shadows and brightness that transformed the familiar landscape into something almost unrecognizable. Robert felt as if he were entering unknown territory, even while on his own land. He decided to return to the ranch house and talk to Jack. The foreman had 45 years of experience in the field and knew the region like no one else. If there was something unusual happening, he would know what to do. On the way back, Shadow maintained a nervous trot, constantly looking over his shoulder as if sensing they were being watched. Robert tried to convince himself it was just his imagination, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed at Evergreen Ranch. Jack was in the corral, separating the calves for the weekly branding. A tall, thin man with a graying mustache and a leather hat always fitted on his head, he greeted his boss with a nod. "Good morning, Mr. Anderson. How was the round?" "Jack, did you notice anything different about the cattle today? The cows weren't in the pasture?" The foreman frowned, wiping his hands on the handkerchief he always carried in the pocket of his plaid shirt. "That's right, boss. Since yesterday, they've been grouping in the farthest corner of the pasture. Kind of strange, isn't it? They stay all huddled together, mooing softly, not wanting to spread out." Robert felt his stomach contract. "And do you have any idea why?" "No, I don't, Mr. Anderson. But animals have their instincts. When they do this, it's because they sense something in the air." Jack took off his hat and ran his hand through his thinning hair. "Do you think it could be a mountain lion? It's been a while since one showed up around here, but I don't." "No, Jack. I saw some strange tracks near the fence, large, deep footprints. They don't look like normal cattle." The two men exchanged a look of concern. In the region, stories of wild animals were not uncommon, but the presence of predators always represented a risk for the herd and for those who worked on the ranch. "I'll take a look around the property." "With the hands," offered Jack. "If there's something out there, we'll find it." Robert nodded, but something in his gut told him that this was just the beginning of something much bigger than either of them imagined. The phone rang in the kitchen when Robert was finishing his solitary lunch. The plate of rice, beans, and pot roast was half eaten. Lately, food didn't seem to have the same flavor as when Helen cooked. Mrs. Davis, the employee who came 3 times a week to help with the house, did her best, but there were seasonings that only a wife knew how to. "Get right, Dad?" Emily's voice on the other end of the line brought a smile to Robert's tired face. "How are you? It's been a while since we talked." "Hi, sweetheart. I'm fine. Yes. And you? How are things at the clinic?" Emily was a veterinarian, graduated 10 years ago from Colorado State University. She had a clinic in town and attended to ranches in the region, but rarely visited Evergreen Ranch. Since her mother's passing, her daughter's visits had become increasingly spaced out, as if the ranch brought back memories too heavy to bear. "The clinic is fine, Dad, but I called because I received some information that might interest you. Some colleagues mentioned wild buffalo that are escaping from neighboring ranches." Robert straightened in his chair, his attention fully focused on the conversation. "Buffalo?" "Yes, Dad. It seems that since last week, lost buffalo have been appearing on various properties in the region. The people from the Department of Environmental Protection said they're being frightened by the movement of tractors in marsh areas. Some escaped and are wandering around." The rancher felt the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fit together. The large footprints, the wild smell, the behavior of the cattle grouping in the corner of the pasture. It all made sense now. "Emily, could you come over here today? I need to talk to you about some things that are happening on the ranch." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Robert knew that his daughter always found excuses not to visit Evergreen Ranch. Since the loss of Helen, Emily seemed to avoid any place that reminded her of her mother. "Dad, I have some appointments scheduled for this afternoon. Please, sweetheart, it's important, and it's been so long since we really talked." The silence stretched on for a few seconds before Emily sighed. "All right, Dad. I'll finish my appointments here and come over. Should be around 4 o'clock. After hanging up, Robert stood in the kitchen looking at the family photo hanging on the wall. It was from the last 4th of July that Helen had organized at the ranch, 3 months before she passed away. In the image, the three of them appeared, smiling, he in the center in a plaid shirt and straw hat, Helen on one side, radiant in a flowery dress, and Emily on the other, still with the long hair that she had cut shortly after. Back then, the house was always full. Helen loved to receive visitors, prepare big Sunday lunches, organize parties for special dates. The ranch pulsed with life. Laughter echoed through the corridors, and the smell of cornbread constantly wafted from the kitchen. Now silence had become the only permanent resident of the main house. Robert went out to the yard and found Shadow grazing near the corral. The horse raised his head upon seeing him, whinnying softly as a greeting. It was curious how that animal seemed to understand his feelings. On the most difficult days, when the longing squeezed too tight, Shadow always appeared nearby, as if knowing that his presence brought comfort. "At least you don't abandon me, do you, my friend?" Jack approached, taking off his hat as a sign of respect. "Mr. Anderson, we took a look around the property. We found more tracks near the pond. They're large indeed and fresh. Whatever it is, it's still around here. My daughter called. Seems like they're wild buffalo escaping from other ranches. They're frightened because of tractors working in marshlands." The foreman nodded, but his expression remained concerned. "Buffalo are fierce animals, Mr. Anderson. If it's a male and it's irritated, it can be dangerous. Do you want me to call the wildlife folks?" Robert pondered for a moment. Perhaps it would be the most sensible decision, but a part of him wanted to resolve the situation without much fuss. Evergreen Ranch had always been a place of peace, and he didn't want to transform it into the scene of official operations. "Let's wait a bit longer. If the animal hasn't caused any damage until now, maybe it's just passing through. But double the vigilance, especially near the cattle." "Yes, sir, and Mr. Anderson, you shouldn't walk alone in the more distant pastures until we know exactly what's going on." Robert smiled for the first time that day. Jack had always been protective, almost like an older brother. "Don't worry, I won't do anything foolish." But deep down he knew he wouldn't be able to stay away from the pasture for long. There was something about this situation that intrigued him, a sensation that fate was preparing something important for him. And for some inexplicable reason, he felt that Shadow would be a fundamental part of what was to come. Emily arrived at the ranch in the late afternoon, driving her white pickup truck, raising dust on the dirt road. Robert observed her from the porch, feeling his heart tighten at seeing how she had changed in recent months. Shorter hair, new glasses, a more serious expression on her face. At 32, she was a determined and independent woman, but he could still see in her the girl who used to run through the pastures riding ponies. "Hi, Dad," she greeted, giving him a kiss on the cheek. The hug lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough for Robert to feel how she had lost weight. "My darling, I've missed you. Come in, let's have some coffee." The kitchen became less silent with Emily's presence. She looked around with a mixture of nostalgia and sadness, as if every corner held memories that were too painful to revisit. Robert prepared coffee the way she liked it, less strong than his, with granulated sugar and a pinch of cinnamon. "The house is different," she commented, stirring the drink slowly. "It's quieter," admitted Robert. "Since your mother, well, you know, Mrs. Davis comes 3 times a week, but it's not the same." Emily lowered her eyes, biting her lower lip as she did when she was a child and nervous. "Dad, I know I should come more often. I know you're alone here, but—" "You don't need to explain, sweetheart. Everyone deals with longing in their own way. It's just that everything here reminds me of her, the smell of the house, the objects, even the sound of the wind in the trees. It seems like she'll appear at any moment in the kitchen door, with that flowery apron, asking if we want corn muffins." Robert extended his hand across the table and touched Emily's. "Your mother would love to know that you're doing well, that you have a profession you love, that you're building your life. She was always very proud of you. I miss her too, Dad. Sometimes I wake up thinking I'm going to call her to tell her some news, then I remember that—" The two remained silent for a few minutes, sharing a pain that words couldn't completely express. Through the window, they could see Shadow grazing calmly near the corral, his black coat shining under the golden light of the late afternoon. "And these buffalo you mentioned?" asked Robert, changing the subject to avoid letting melancholy take over the conversation. Emily composed herself, returning to professional mode. "There are at least 5 animals that escaped from different properties. The people from the department believe they're moving in search of water and pasture, frightened by the movement of machinery in the marsh areas. Buffalo are territorial. Animals, Dad. If they feel threatened, they can become aggressive. And you think one of them might be here at Evergreen Ranch? From the symptoms you described, the cattle grouping together, the tracks, the smell, it's quite likely. The ideal would be to contact the wildlife department to capture and relocate it." Robert nodded, but there was something in his expression that Emily knew well. It was the same stubborn look he had when he decided to solve things on his own. "Dad, you're not thinking of going after this animal, are you?" "Of course not, honey. I'm not a young man anymore to be having that kind of adventure." But Emily wasn't convinced. She knew her father too well to know when he was planning something. "Promise me you won't do anything foolish. Buffalo are one of the most dangerous animals that exist when they feel cornered. I promise I'll be careful." She realized that this was the maximum guarantee she could extract from him. Robert had always been a man of action, accustomed to solving problems with his own hands. The ranch was his domain, his kingdom, and any threat to it made him restless. After coffee, they walked to the stable to see Shadow. The horse approached the fence, whinnying softly as he recognized Emily. She extended her hand for him to sniff, smiling for the first time since she had arrived. "He looks beautiful, Dad. What a shiny coat." "Shadow is special," said Robert, stroking the animal's neck. "Sometimes I have the impression that he understands me better than most people. Horses are very intelligent animals. They create deep emotional bonds with their owners." Emily examined Shadow with a professional eye. "He looks healthy, well-fed. You take good care of him." "He takes care of me, too." There was something in her father's voice that caught Emily's attention, a different tenderness, as if that horse represented more than just a pet. She made a mental note to observe this relationship more closely. The sun was beginning to set when Emily said goodbye. She promised to return the following weekend and made her father swear again that he would be prudent with the buffalo situation. Robert waved from the porch until the pickup truck disappeared around the bend in the road. That night, lying in the empty bed, he looked at the ceiling, thinking about the conversation with his daughter. He had noticed how she avoided talking about relationships, work, the future. She seemed to be merely surviving, not living. Perhaps the two of them were more alike than he imagined, both trapped in their own prisons of longing. Outside, Shadow whinnied softly in the darkness, as if he knew that tomorrow would be a day different from all others. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Let us know what city you're watching from. We continue. The following day dawned with a dense fog that covered the pastures like a white veil. Robert woke earlier than usual, with a strange presentiment weighing on his chest. The air was colder than normal, and the silence of dawn seemed deeper, as if nature itself were holding its breath. He put on his leather boots, worn by time, and walked to the stable. Shadow awaited him restlessly, pawing the ground nervously and shaking his black mane. His large dark eyes seemed more alert than ever, his nostrils dilated, catching every scent brought by the morning breeze. "Good morning, my friend," murmured Robert, extending his hand to stroke the horse's neck. "You felt it too, didn't you? There's something different in the air today." He decided to make his morning rounds mounted on Shadow, even knowing that the horse was agitated. Perhaps it would be better to investigate the buffalo situation and resolve the issue once and for all. He couldn't sleep properly knowing there was a wild animal wandering on his property. The fog made visibility difficult, transforming familiar trees into ghostly shadows. Shadow advanced with cautious steps, his ears in constant movement, like radars picking up sounds that Robert couldn't perceive. As they approached the pasture, the wild smell intensified, burning his nostrils like a silent warning. "Easy, boy," whispered Robert, feeling the tension growing in the air. "Let's take it slow." When they reached the trail leading to the more distant pasture, Shadow stopped abruptly. The horse snorted softly, lowered his ears, and took a few steps back, clearly reluctant to proceed. Robert tried to encourage him, but the animal remained firm, trembling slightly under the saddle. "What is it, Shadow? What do you see?" It was then that Robert noticed the fog was slowly dissipating, revealing undefined shapes among the trees. So at first he thought they were just shadows, but gradually an enormous silhouette began to materialize on the trail ahead. His heart raced when he understood what he was seeing. There, less than 50 meters away, was the most impressive buffalo he had ever seen in his entire life. The animal was colossal, with dark fur that glistened wet with dew, wide and pointed horns that seemed capable of knocking down a tree. Its small dark eyes fixed on Robert with an intensity that froze the rancher's blood. The buffalo was clearly irritated. It was breathing heavily, expelling steam from its nostrils and kicking the ground forcefully, raising small clouds of damp earth. It was an adult male, probably weighing more than 1,800 pounds, with muscles that contracted under its skin like taut ropes. Robert froze in place, all the muscles in his body tensing with fear. He had heard stories about wild buffalo, but never imagined finding himself face to face with one. The animal was imposing, primitive, carrying with it all the brute force of wild nature. Shadow began to back away, but the movement caught the buffalo's attention. The animal raised its head, fixed its somber gaze on the two intruders and, without warning, attacked. The sound was deafening, a deep and furious bellow that echoed through the woods, followed by the thundering of hooves against the ground. The buffalo charged full speed, its gigantic mass gaining frightening velocity. Robert saw that mountain of muscle and fury coming in his direction and knew there was no time to flee. Shadow balked, turning sideways in an attempt to protect his rider. The impact was brutal. The buffalo hit Robert's legs with tremendous force, throwing him from the saddle as if he were a rag doll. The rancher flew through the air and hit the ground violently, feeling a sharp pain shoot up his ribs when his back met the cold, damp earth. Dazed, with blurred vision and his body in shock, Robert tried to crawl away. His legs weren't responding properly, a sensation of numbness taking over his limbs. From the corner of his eye he saw the buffalo turning to charge again, its horns pointed in his direction like deadly lances. It was at this moment that Shadow did something extraordinary. The horse, which had moved a few meters away after the first impact, suddenly advanced toward the buffalo. He wasn't fleeing, he was attacking. With a loud, defiant whinny that tore through the morning air, Shadow reared up on his hind legs, transforming himself into a black, imposing tower against the gray sky. The buffalo, Surprised by the horse's audacity, hesitated for a fraction of a second. It was enough for Shadow to attack. He came down forcefully, striking the buffalo's horns with his front hooves, diverting the animal's head at the exact moment it was preparing to hit Robert again. The sound of the impact echoed through the woods like thunder. The buffalo shook, its head dazed while Shadow maintained his defiant posture, whinnying loudly and digging his hooves into the ground. For a few seconds that seemed eternal. The two animals stared at each other, horse and buffalo, domesticated and wild, in a silent battle of wills. Finally, the buffalo decided to retreat. It snorted one last time, pawed the ground as a sign of threat, but turned and disappeared among the trees, its immense form being swallowed by the fog that still persisted in the woods. Robert remained on the ground, trembling, looking at Shadow with a mixture of gratitude and amazement that he couldn't express in words. The horse approached him slowly, lowering his head to sniff him, checking if he was all right. When Robert extended his trembling hand to touch the animal's muzzle, he felt hot tears running down his weather-beaten face. In that moment, he understood that his life had been saved not by luck or coincidence, but by something much deeper and more powerful than he had ever imagined possible. The distant sound of a motorcycle cut through the morning silence, approaching along the trail at speed. Robert was still on the ground, propped up on one elbow, trying to catch his breath and process what had just happened. Shadow remained by his side, vigilant, his ears in constant movement, ready to defend his owner should the buffalo return. "Mr. Anderson! Mr. Anderson!" Jack's voice echoed through the woods even before the foreman appeared on the trail. He was riding his red Honda, raising a cloud of dust behind him. Seeing his boss on the ground and Shadow nervous, he braked abruptly and jumped off the motorcycle before it had completely stopped. "My God, what happened here?" Jack knelt beside Robert, examining him with concerned eyes. "Are you hurt?" "You were right, Jack," murmured Robert, accepting help to sit up. "It was a buffalo. Enormous, it caught me off guard." The foreman looked around, noticing the deep marks on the ground where the animals had fought, small broken branches, the churned earth. "Where is it now?" "It left." Robert pointed to the woods. Shadow saved me, Jack. I've never seen anything like it. He faced that bull alone." Jack helped his boss to stand, examining his legs for serious injuries. "Can you walk? Do you need to go to the hospital?" "I'm sore, but I don't think I broke anything important." Robert leaned on the foreman's shoulder, testing his weight on his legs. It hurt, but he could stand. "How did you know I was here?" "I saw you leaving early mounted on Shadow. After an hour I decided to come check. I'm glad I did." Jack shook his head, clearly relieved to find his boss alive. "Let's get back to the house. You need a hot shower and rest." "And Shadow?" "I'll take him." Jack held the horse's reins, which was reluctant to move away from Robert. "Easy, boy, your owner is fine." On the way back to the ranch, Robert rode on the back of Jack's motorcycle, while the foreman led Shadow by the reins. The Sioux rancher couldn't stop looking back, observing the horse that trotted calmly behind them. There was something different in the animal's eyes, a depth that he had never noticed before. At the ranch house, after a hot shower and a shot of whiskey to calm his nerves, Robert sat on the porch, watching Shadow in the pasture. The horse grazed peacefully, as if nothing extraordinary had happened, but from time to time he would raise his head in the direction of the house, as if checking if his owner was all right. "Jack," called the rancher when the foreman approached, "sit here with me." The two men remained silent for a few minutes, observing the normal movement of the ranch that contrasted with the drama experienced that morning. The ranch hands worked in the corrals, the cattle mooed in the distance. Everything seemed to follow its natural rhythm. "You know something, Jack? In the last 5 years since Helen passed, I've been living just to live, waking up, working, sleeping, in a routine that led nowhere." Jack nodded in silence, respecting his boss's moment of openness. "Today, when that buffalo came in my direction, I thought it was the end. And you know what went through my mind? That maybe it would be better that way, that I could finally rest from this longing that consumes me every day." "Mr. Anderson?" "Let me finish, Jack." Robert leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. But when I saw Shadow throwing himself in front of that animal to protect me, something changed inside me. He risked his own life to save mine. An animal that I always treated well, but that I never thought had so much love for me. Robert's voice faltered on the last word. Jack had never seen his boss so emotional, so vulnerable. That horse didn't just save me from the buffalo, Jack. He saved me from myself. He showed me that there are still reasons to live, to fight, that there are still those who care about me. At that moment, the phone rang inside the house. It was Emily calling to know how the night had been and if there was any news about the buffalo. Robert hesitated for a moment before telling her what had happened. "What, Dad, are you all right? I'm coming over right now." "Calm down, honey, I'm fine, just a bit sore." "No, Dad, I'm coming. I need to examine you properly and take a look at Shadow, too." While waiting for his daughter to arrive, Robert returned to the stable. Shadow approached the fence, extending his neck to be petted. The rancher spent long minutes just stroking the animal, feeling a gratitude that overflowed from his chest. "Thank you, my friend," he whispered. "Thank you for showing me that it's still worth being here." Shadow whinnied softly, as if understanding every word. And perhaps he did understand. There were mysteries in the relationship between men and animals that science still couldn't fully explain. Bonds that transcended species, that spoke directly to the heart. That afternoon, for the first time in 5 years, Robert felt that he had rediscovered a purpose. Not just to survive grief, but to live fully, honoring Helen's memory, through a life worth living. And he knew that Shadow would be his companion on this journey of rediscovery. The buffalo had disappeared into the woods, but had left behind something much more valuable than fear. It had left a lesson about courage, loyalty, and the transformative power of true love. Emily arrived at the ranch in record time, the pickup truck raising more dust than normal on the road. She jumped from the vehicle before the engine had completely stopped, carrying her veterinary bag, and with an expression of concern she couldn't disguise. "Dad, how are you?" She ran to the porch where Robert was waiting for her, seated in the rocking chair that Helen had loved so much. "Calm down, honey, I'm fine, just a bit sore." He stood up to receive her, noticing that for the first time in years she didn't hesitate to embrace him. The hug was long, tight, full of fear and relief. "Tell me everything that happened. Don't omit any detail." While Robert recounted the encounter with the buffalo, Emily examined him with professional care, checking reflexes, palpating ribs, observing bruises. Her trained hands searched for signs of internal injuries or fractures that might have gone unnoticed in the adrenaline of the moment. "You were very lucky, Dad. Buffalo can cause very serious injuries." She shook her head, still processing the story. "And Shadow really did that? Faced the buffalo alone?" "I saw it with my own eyes. Emily, I never imagined a horse could be so courageous, so protective. Horses develop very strong emotional bonds. They're extremely loyal animals when they trust someone." Emily put the stethoscope back in her bag. "I need to examine him too. He might have been hurt in the confrontation." They walked together to the stable where Shadow was waiting calmly. The horse approached the fence, allowing Emily to examine him without resistance. She ran her hands over the black coat, checking for cuts or bruises, observing his breathing and behavior. "He's fine. Some superficial scratches, nothing serious." Emily stroked the animal's neck, amazed. "It's really impressive what he did. Pure protective instinct. You know, honey, today I understood something important." Robert rested his arms on the fence, observing Shadow with a new look. "In recent years, I've been living as if I were just waiting for time to pass, as if life had ended along with your mother." Emily felt her heart tighten. It was rare for her father to open up like this, to talk about feelings with such sincerity. "When that buffalo came in my direction, I thought maybe it was the end. And for a moment I even thought it would be a relief, to end this feeling of emptiness that accompanies me every day." "Dad?" Emily's voice came out choked. "But when I saw Shadow risking his life to save mine, something awoke inside me. It made me realize that there are still reasons to fight, to truly live, not just exist." They remained silent for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Shadow observed them with his large, intelligent eyes, as if understanding the importance of that moment. "Dad, I need to confess something." Emily took a deep breath, gathering courage. "I've been just existing too. Since Mom passed, I've avoided everything that reminds me of her. This ranch, this house, even you." Robert turned to look at her, surprised by her honesty. "I'm afraid of the pain, Dad. Afraid of feeling longing, of crying, of accepting that she's really gone. So I buried myself in work, avoided visits, pretended that if I didn't think about it, it wouldn't hurt as much. And did it hurt anyway? Every day." Tears began to roll down Emily's face. "Every day I miss her. The smell of her perfume, her laugh, her advice, her scoldings, even the arguments we had about my boyfriends." Robert approached his daughter and hugged her, feeling her tremble with contained emotion. It was the first time in 5 years that they cried together over Helen's absence. "You know what your mother would say if she saw us like this? Two stubborn people, each suffering alone in their corner, when we could be sharing good memories and helping each other." Emily laughed through her tears. "She would say that we're two proud fools who inherited her stubbornness." And she would be right. Robert brushed a strand of hair from his daughter's face. "Helen always said that life is too precious to be wasted on regrets and resentments, that each day is an opportunity to be happy." "I missed you so much, Dad. Our conversations, Sunday lunches, hearing your stories about the ranch. And I missed having my daughter around, knowing about your life, your plans, your dreams." Shadow approached the fence more closely, as if wanting to participate in that moment of reconciliation. He extended his neck and gently touched Emily's arm, bringing a smile to her face. "I think he wants to remind us that we're not alone," she said, petting the horse. "Shadow taught me today that true love doesn't give up, that it's worth fighting for those we love." Robert looked at his daughter with bright eyes. "And I love you, Emily, more than anything in this world." "I love you too, Dad." At that moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in golden hues while Shadow grazed calmly nearby, father and daughter knew that something fundamental had changed between them. The buffalo had taken away not only its own footprints in the earth, but also the invisible barriers that separated them. Evergreen Ranch would pulse with life again, not just with the sound of animals and the work of the ranch hands, but with the human warmth that made a ranch a true home. And Shadow, with his silent and courageous loyalty, had been the catalyst for this transformation. Emily decided to stay for dinner, and for the first time in years, the kitchen table would be set for 2 people. As they prepared the meal together, talking about plans for the future and sharing memories of Helen, both knew they were beginning a new chapter in their lives, a chapter written with the ink of gratitude, love, and renewed hope. 3 months passed since the encounter with the buffalo, and Evergreen Ranch had transformed in ways that Robert had never imagined possible. The main house, which for so long had echoed only with the silence of loneliness, now vibrated again with life and joy. Emily had kept her promise to visit more often. Every weekend she arrived with her white pickup truck, bringing news from town, recipes she had tried, and always some treat for Shadow: fresh carrots, apples, or brown sugar cubes that the horse received with whinnies of contentment. That Saturday morning, father and daughter were having coffee on the porch, observing the movement of the ranch awakening. Jack was organizing the hands for the cattle vaccination, and the sound of the workers' voices mixed with the singing of birds in a symphony that had always been part of Evergreen Ranch, but that Robert had stopped noticing during the years of mourning. "Dad, I have some news to tell you," said Emily, stirring her coffee with sugar. There was a different sparkle in her eyes, a light that hadn't appeared for a long time. "Go ahead, honey." "I met someone," she smiled shyly. "He's another veterinarian, works at the Department of Environmental Protection. We met when I went to get information about wild buffalo." Robert felt his heart warm. "And what's he like?" "He's kind, intelligent, loves animals as much as I do, and—" She hesitated for a moment. "He wants to see the ranch. He wants to meet you." "Then bring him here next weekend. We'll have a special lunch." Robert reached across the table and touched his daughter's hand. Your mother would be very happy to know that you found someone who makes you smile like this. I think so. Emily looked toward the horizon, where the morning sun painted the pastures golden. Sometimes I have the feeling that she's around here, knowing everything, rooting for us to be happy. I feel that too, especially when I'm with Shadow, as if she had left a little piece of herself in everything she loved on this ranch. After coffee, they walked to the stable for the morning routine of caring for the horse. Shadow greeted them with his usual elegance, approaching the fence and extending his neck for morning pets. His black coat shone under the sun like polished silk, and his large, intelligent eyes seemed to smile at seeing his favorite humans. You know, Dad, I've been thinking a lot about what happened that day. Shadow didn't just save your life. What do you mean? He saved our family. If it weren't for him, maybe we would have continued each in our own corner, wasting the years we still have together. Emily stroked the horse's neck. It's as if he knew exactly what we needed. Robert nodded, remembering a conversation he had with Helen years ago, when Shadow was still a young colt full of energy. She had said that this horse was special, that there was something in his eyes that spoke directly to the heart. At the time, he had smiled at his wife's sensitivity, but now he understood perfectly what she meant. Your mother always said that Shadow wasn't an ordinary horse. She said he had an old, wise soul. Robert chuckled softly at the memory. I thought it was nonsense, but today I know she was right. After taking care of Shadow, they went to inspect the pastures. The ranch was prosperous, the cattle healthy, and Robert had even hired 2 new hands to expand the breeding. His plans for the future included not only expanding the business, but also transforming part of the property into a center for equine therapy. After everything we've experienced, I want other people to be able to experience the special connection that exists between humans and horses, he explained to Emily as they walked along the trail where everything had happened, especially people who are going through difficult times like we went through. It's a wonderful idea, Dad. I can help with the veterinary part of the project. That would be perfect. We can work together, make Evergreen Ranch a place of healing and hope. That afternoon, they received an unexpected visit. Dr. Thompson from the Department of Environmental Protection arrived to give news about the buffalo that had caused all the commotion. The animal had been safely captured 2 weeks after the Eiger incident and relocated to a wildlife reserve where it lived peacefully with others of its kind. It was an adult male, really impressive, Dr. Thompson recounted. Probably the largest wild buffalo ever recorded in the region. You were very lucky that there were no serious injuries. The luck was called Shadow, replied Robert, pointing to the horse that grazed near the house. He's the real hero of this story. When the visitor left, father and daughter settled again on the porch to watch the sunset. It was a ritual they had resumed, these moments of silent contemplation that further tightened the renewed bonds between them. Dad, can I ask a question? Of course, honey. Do you feel that Mom would approve of all this? Me dating, you making new plans, both of us restarting our lives? Robert remained silent for a few moments, observing Shadow, who approached the porch as he did every afternoon. The horse seemed to have an internal clock that made him seek human company at the most beautiful time of day. You know what your mother told me on the last day we talked? Robert's voice became soft, filled with tenderness. She said that I shouldn't stay trapped in the past, that I should live fully each day I had left. She said that the greatest gift I could give her was to be happy. And what did you answer? That it would be impossible to be happy without her. Robert smiled, stroking Shadow, who had rested his head on his shoulder. But now I understand that she wasn't talking about forgetting or replacing the love we had. She was talking about honoring that love by living a life worth living. And do you think you've managed that? We've managed it, honey, both of us have, and Shadow was our guardian angel on this journey. As night approached, stars began to dot the immense prairie sky. In the kitchen, the table was set for 2 people, and the smell of home cooking permeated the house with the aroma of a true home. Emily had prepared her father's favorite dish, chicken stew with dumplings, exactly as Helen used to make. That night, after Emily left with the promise to return the following week with her boyfriend, Robert walked to the stable for his nightly farewell to Shadow. The horse waited for him as always, with the serene patience of one who understands that some rituals are sacred. "Thank you, my friend," he whispered, running his hand along the silky mane. "Thank you for teaching me that true love never gives up, that it's worth fighting for happiness, and that sometimes angels come disguised as stubborn and courageous horses." Shadow whinnied softly, a sound that seemed to carry all the ancestral wisdom of animals that choose humans as family. And in that moment, under the starry Wyoming sky, Robert knew with absolute certainty that Helen would be proud of the man he had become again. Evergreen Ranch continued to be the same fertile red earth as always, but now it pulsed with the energy of one who understood that each dawn is a new opportunity to love, to fight, and to be truly happy. And Shadow, with his silent and protective presence, would forever remain the guardian of this reclaimed happiness. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Let us know